right now, I mean, we know that Latinos make up nearly 20% of the population, so it's almost like one in five. And among employer businesses, we're seeing, I mean, almost 10% are employer businesses in the US. So that's been growing, but not as fast as, let's say, we would like, or as fast as the population. And this year, as part of the work, we've been seeing that Latinos continue to create firms and jobs and increase revenue at a faster rate than white-owned businesses. And something that really stood out is that they're also driving net new business creation and jobs, more so than any other major racial ethnic group in the US. And this was assessing between the period of 2017 and 2023. And there we saw that Latino-owned firms actually grew by 48%, adding more than 180,000 firms at a time where white-owned businesses actually declined by 3% and lost over 140,000 jobs. And in terms of job creation, Latinos created over 975,000 jobs, so nearly a million jobs, which was also a greater proportion compared to white-owned businesses.
I've had the opportunity to work on this report for nearly a decade now. And as Rosalia mentioned, we've been tracking the growth in the number of Latino-owned business over that time period. And every year we add in new data as it becomes available by the census. And what's really standing out to me is that this is no longer a moment in time, growth during a particular period. This is now a trend line that has been building over years. And, we saw this during the economic recession of 2007, 2008, and then again in COVID, were it not for Latinos starting businesses, there would have been fewer net new businesses in the US overall. And so again, this has been consistent growth. We've been measuring it over time, and there's a lot of momentum. And I think what this body of research is also doing is demystifying notions of where Latinos are starting businesses. They're starting businesses across all sectors.
Yeah, so businesses are being created across diverse sectors from tech to traditional sectors like construction. So this year we found that nearly one in four, so 26% of Latinos are tech centric, meaning they are either developing or selling software or hardware. And that's also larger than white owned businesses. So this is increased from prior years. And we're also seeing that in traditional sectors like construction, there was a growth of 86% between 2017 and 2023 for Latinos compared to 2% for white owned businesses. So there it's interesting to see how just with the growth in tech, especially with AI, which is driving demand for new infrastructure, just seeing this potential intersection between construction and tech and seeing that Latinos are expanding in both.
Rosalia just mentioned that one in four Latino-owned employer businesses are tech companies. And so this year we also were able to dig in a little bit deeply into the experiences of financing for those tech companies, the growth-oriented, innovation-driven companies, looking at their VC experience. So, this report has looked deeply not just at the opportunities, but also some of the challenges. And of course, the perennial challenge is access to capital. And we've looked at that in a number of ways over the years. The number that's been heard in the ecosystem for quite some time has been Latino founders only obtain 2% of VC dollars. In 2025, it was less than 2%. It was about 1.8%. And we saw a very big boom in the VC ecosystem in 2021. And Latino founders were able to get in on some of those deals. But since that peak in 2021, where we have seen the biggest gap and the hardest hit for Latino founders is at the pre-seed and early stage funding. The funding for that group has been reduced by 80%. And so we can think about the long-term ramifications if we're not funding startups at the beginning. What does that look like for later stage deals? Certainly it will become abysmal. And so, I think there's been a lot of, anti-DEI backlash that's probably contributed to some of this decline. But it's rather disappointing that that number is now well below 2%. Which is also, we shouldn't be championing 2% as kind of the golden star or golden standard here, but that's kind of where it's been hovering for the last 10 years or so. And we're seeing this decline most recently.
Inflation continues to be one of the top challenge for Latino and white-owned businesses. And this year we also asked through more like qualitative open-ended questions about how they were navigating inflation. And both groups, we found that both Latino and white-owned businesses were using some of the similar strategies around strengthening supplier relationships and procurement. So having to do more like vendor negotiations and local sourcing, more like bulk purchasing. Um, and we also saw that with Latino-owned businesses, they were trying to balance both like the operational adjustments as well as the how to maintain the well-being and morale of with their employees within the company. So that was something that also just stood out where more Latino-owned businesses, I think, were having to navigate that or concerned about their employees as they're going through inflation. And then we had a pulse survey in January. And in that pulse survey, we also saw that 1 in 3 Latino-owned businesses versus 1 in 7 white-owned businesses were to report being negatively impacted by immigration enforcement.
Yeah, and if I may here, when I hear the word immigration enforcement, for small businesses, that's really coming into play in two ways, with their workforce and on the consumer side. And on the workforce side of things, our prior research has shown that Latino-owned businesses are more likely to employ other Latinos. And they're also more likely to have Latinos on their leadership team. So you might think that immigration enforcement could directly be impacting their staffing, their workforce, or indirectly impacting their staffing through their family ties and communities. On the consumer side of things, what we're starting to see is that there's a drop in overall economic activity. There's really great ongoing research out of UCLA that is using cell phone data and is tracking the 10 immigration raids that happened in the Los Angeles area in the summer of last year. And what they're finding is that in the days and weeks after those immigration raids, business corridors, the foot traffic has declined and stays low. And so this is certainly something that we need to continue to measure and quantify to understand the longer term ramifications, not just for individual immigrants being removed, but for small business, for workforce, and for overall local economic activity. And I will say it's important to note that we've been here before. Historically, the United States has had 5 periods of massive immigration action. And I think contrary to popular belief, during those time periods, rather than lowering unemployment actually increases, right? So there is a complementarity that's happening when you remove individuals that are contributing to the workforce and the economy. Other jobs, as a result, tend to also dissipate and go away.
Looking at just like, well, the optimism, their ambition, growth-oriented mindset. This year we also asked about different growth strategies and different strategies that businesses may have accomplished or were considering. And Latinos and these 10 out of 10 strategies were more likely to either accomplish or were considering. And I think that just speaks to the ambition, wanting to grow, expand, build partnerships. So even just despite the challenges, I think just really excited um, to continue to grow their businesses.
I will say that the state of Latino entrepreneurship is resilient and emboldened. We just released this report at Stanford GSB. There were over 1,500 people in attendance. There was a reverberation in the room. People are energized, and small businesses, tech businesses want to rebuild entire systems that are in many ways collapsing. So there is this energy of optimism and hope, and that's certainly something that we've seen over the years as well, despite the ongoing challenges in regards to tariffs and inflation and immigration enforcement. Latino-owned businesses are resilient and unwavered.